Lesson 13, the law of sowing and reaping. Now, our tool belt is stocked, and we're going to dive into some of the mental laws and discuss how we use them to build our beautiful life. Our first law is the law of sowing and reaping. This law states that we reap what we sow, we reap more than we sow, and we reap after we sow. Now, this is easy to understand in the physical world. If we plant or sow wheat, we will harvest or reap wheat. And we'll harvest more than we sow. If we plant one kernel of wheat, we can grow up to 200 kernels on one stalk. And we reap after we sow. We have to plant and then allow what we have planted to grow and mature. We don't sow this morning and reap this afternoon. This same principle applies in our spiritual and mental lives. We reap what we have sown. Okay, now, this is very logical to me now, but 20 years ago, this law hit me like a ton of bricks. I grew up thinking, believing that fate, destiny, God's will controlled everything. People who lived in big houses were just destined for that. People who were happy were just blessed by fate. And God just randomly bestowed beautiful lives on certain people. That is really what I thought. It seems so absurd now. But because that was my belief, this law was terrifying to me. You see, when fate and destiny are in the driver's seat, I'm not responsible. I can complain, but nothing is really my fault. Well, this law places the responsibility of my harvest directly on my shoulders. Now, this is not terrifying news. This is really terrific news, right? We have the power to sow anything we desire in our lives. And how do we sow? Well, we're sowing continually with our every thought, word, and action. How do we take control of what we sow? With our tools: affirmations, visualizations, written goals, and blessings. Step number 1 is to accept that we are responsible for our harvest. Picture your life as a field, a small 80-foot by 80-foot patch of earth. What is growing there today? We'll say our good seed is wheat and our bad seed is ragweed. What is your field? Is it 80% wheat or is it 80% ragweed? Do we need a noxious weed control program? At one time or another, we all do. Now, we can all remember sayings that our mothers said time and time again. Well, what I told Mandy and Allie over and over when they were growing up was, whatever you do comes back to you multiplied by 2 or 22. This is a restatement of this law. And I tell them, this is great news. Do good and good returns to you multiplied. Now, we sow individually, but we also sow as a society. And I'm an optimist, and I'm sharing powerful, positive stories to encourage you in your journey. But I have to share something now that's more concerning than encouraging. I'm going to share some of what we are sowing for health, or rather for disease, as a society. We're sowing portion distortion. What we consider normal portions has tripled over the last 20 years. We're sowing insanely rich desserts, donuts with candy bars on top, brownie mountains with over 1,600 calories. Companies seem anxious to outdo each other in creating menu items that destroy health. And we're sowing healthy options like yogurt with 8 teaspoons of sugar per serving. That's more than twice the sugar in a serving of ice cream. So what are we reaping as a society? Well, 1 in 5 school-age children has diabetes. 9% of American adults have diabetes, and 27% have prediabetes. We're reaping ill health. Now, we might feel like we can't influence that if we're not an executive food company, but we can. We influence it by our actions. Jeff and I usually split an entree when we go out to eat. There are a lot of restaurants I just refuse to patronize, and I feed my family appropriate portions of healthy food the majority of the time. This is a real health crisis facing our nation, and it's a heartbreaking legacy to leave our children. We can turn the tide by sowing healthy habits. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. Back to our field and our harvest. Isn't this law of sowing and reaping beautiful? Doesn't it create a marvelous order in our world? Wouldn't it be chaotic if we lived in a world without the law of sowing and reaping? A world where you would plant one seed and not know what would grow? Without this law, we would lose control of our harvest. With this law, we have control of our harvest. And God's universe is not capricious. We don't plant apples and harvest oranges. We don't sow harshness and reap love. We don't sow wasteful spending and reap wealth. Galatians 6:7. Make no mistake, God is not mocked. A person will reap what he sows. And do you want to harvest peace? Sow peaceful, merciful thoughts, words, and actions. Visualize yourself creating peace. Do you want to harvest financial wealth? Affirm you have financial security. Visualize yourself detached from your wealth. Write a goal of the robust financial flow in your life. See how we're controlling the application of this law with our tools? Here's today's gold nugget. If we sow good seed and we persevere, in due season, we will claim our harvest. Now, that being true, what about when we harvest something we didn't sow? I thought I was sowing health before my diagnosis. How did I end up reaping cancer? Do enemies sow bad seed? Does society? Does an ill wind blow it in? That's what we'll tackle in the next lesson. Today's exercise is to assess your current harvest. Write down something you want to start sowing, something you want to continue sowing, and something you want to stop sowing. You have the tools to do that now. Something to start sowing, something to continue sowing, and something to stop sowing. May God bless you, and may God bless your journey. See you next time.